to MetroPolitics on Jewish Week TV. We're here with U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand at the Jewish Week offices. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And let's get right to the news of the day. An international incident off the coast of Gaza Strip. 9 people are dead. Who do you think is to blame for this incident?
Well, it's an issue we're still investigating exactly what happened. But Israel has a right to defend herself. And it is very concerning to me that there's been a rush and a leap to judgment on an issue that we don't have all the facts. I think it is important that Israel have the ability to check cargoes that are going into Gaza for their security. And, I had the benefit of visiting Sderot when I was in Israel. And I can tell you, as a mom with 2 young children, there's nothing more disturbing to me that parents have to worry when they drop their children off at a daycare center or to school whether their children will survive that day. And I saw the bomb shelters that these children sleep in during their nap time. So to me, I think this issue needs to be focused on based on the facts, and we can have a broader discussion. But in all instances, Israel has a right to defend herself.
What should the U.S. response to this incident be?
Well, I think the U.S. has already made quite a measured response and has suggested that Israel do its own investigation and do a thorough investigation to the facts of the incident, and that there need not be a rush to judgment in this incident. It's very important that we get the facts, know what happened, know what the provocation was, and obviously, from what I've been able to read in terms of the facts that have come forward so far, this was something that was contrary to the blockade. There are ways and processes and procedures to get goods and supplies into Gaza, and those were disregarded.
Do you see this incident harming the international support for sanctions, increased sanctions, tougher sanctions against Iran?
Well, I certainly hope not, and I hope that we have the votes that we need to have a very tough sanctions bill. I think it is very important, to move forward on certainly in the House and Senate. I'd like to move our bill forward, which is a very tough bill and one that will have crippling sanctions, because we have an opportunity here. Iran is clearly at a decision point. They are either going to join and be part of the world economic community, or they are going to militarize their nuclear capability. And the U.S. government must do whatever we can do to use our leverage, to put pressure, to make Iran make the right decision to be part of the world economic community and not put the U.S. national security at risk.
How do you feel about the Obama administration's policy in general toward the peace talks, and particularly with the emphasis early on the settlement issue?
Well, I think that it's important that all parties bring something to the table. And I think just to focus on something that Israel must do without a fuller discussion is not the way forward. The way forward, Prime Minister Netanyahu has put a lot on the table already. He's called for a two-state solution. He's given a lot on the West Bank in terms of movement, in terms of settlements. And so he's put a lot on the table. I think we need to see the same from the Palestinians. We have yet to hear from them that they call for a two-state solution. So it is very important that all parties are at the table and willing to put something on the table. And I think that the U.S. focus should be continue to be well measured in that regard.
Switching to local politics, you're seeking your first elected term as U.S. Senator. Last week, designated by the Democrats as the candidate. Top Democrats, including the president, have cleared the field, basically, to allow you to run essentially unopposed. Why shouldn't there be an open primary process for this?
There should be an open primary process. My view is anybody who wants to run should run. And a lot of candidates have chosen not to run. Candidates make their own decisions based on whether they think they can win, what their own steps are, what their path to victory might be. And candidates have made those judgments. But in terms of support, I'm extremely grateful for President Obama's support. It's a great honor and privilege to have the support of the president. And he's made statements saying that I'm a strong senator, that I represent our state well. And I'm grateful for that. And that's, any advocacy group, any elected leader, that's what we do. We make decisions on who we think are best to represent our communities. So to get the support of Senator Schumer and President Obama and many other electeds is a great honor and privilege for me. And I'm just going to keep fighting as hard as I can for New York. I don't take a back seat to anybody. And I will show New Yorkers during this next few months that I put them and their interests and their families first.
Yeah, how is it when you're running upstate? It must be very difficult to cobble together a coalition of more conservative upstate and the Democrat base, which is a little referred to downstate. How do you do that?
Well, as with any election, I hope to earn every single vote. And what I've been doing is fighting for New York and putting New York's economic agenda front and center. You know, the biggest problem we have across the state is jobs. People are very worried about losing jobs, they're worried about finding jobs, they're worried about just providing for their family. So what I've been doing is creating an economic agenda that's going to create those jobs, increase lending to small businesses all across the state, making sure that we have tax credits and tax cuts that help businesses grow, and really, you know, make sure New Yorkers have what they need to provide for their families.
On May 12th, you released a statement about the Homeland Security funding decrease from New York. You said that New York City remains the #1 terrorist target around the world. We must redouble our efforts to keep New York safe and provide more Homeland Security funding. How's that going? Is there a chance of changing that cut?
New York is the #1 terrorist target, that's clear. And so I'm doing whatever I can do to bring the resources to bear to protect our city and our state. There's a number of funding streams that are most important, but what I'm most worried about is a dirty bomb. I'm very worried about a dirty bomb being set off, you know, in Times Square, exactly what this bombing attempt, you know, creates the risk and the worry about. And so I think New York should be getting more funding because of that. And I think, you know, it's something that we should be getting far more than we're getting, and I'm advocating for about $50 million more.
What is the status of those negotiations right now? What is the White House's response to the arguments you just made?
Well, we've been making the arguments with the White House, and we were hoping to get some additional money put in this upcoming supplemental, but we didn't get it in the supplemental. So we're going to try to get it in the next funding stream. It's really important, and perhaps even in the defense authorization bill, we can change some of the formulas to make them more risk-based. And so we're just going to keep fighting. We're going to find every bill we can, and maybe, you know, even a standalone bill. But it is very important that we not cut terror funding at a time when New York obviously is a terror target. You know, I've been advocating for a while to get more money. You know, we had 2 attempts on synagogues up in Riverdale. And so we want to make sure we can increase that budget. And I was able to get almost an additional $10 million into that budget.
Now, you visited Israel twice, I believe, in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And any plans to make a 3rd visit sometime during the campaign?
I will make another visit to Israel. I will find a time that makes sense. But my first visit as a U.S. Senator was extremely valuable to me. It was a visit that was focused entirely on terrorism. I met with General Yadlin, who is an extraordinary man, head of military intelligence, someone who is extremely strong, trustworthy, and wise. I was able to meet with the Prime Minister. I was able to meet the head of Shin Bet, the head of Mossad, the head of Southern Command. I was able to visit Yad Vashem and Sderot. And so my visit very much focused on what we need to be doing, you know, as allies and as friends to really combat terrorism more effectively. And so that's my focus, that's my lens, that's why I care about this terror funding, that's why I care about our relationship with Israel and making sure that that bond remains unbreakable and that we stand beside and behind Israel when we need to.
Senator Gillibrand, thank you so much for coming to our offices. It's a pleasure having you here, and good luck on the campaign going forward.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.